Linda Farrow was the last person anyone in Maplewood expected to see in handcuffs until the day she calmly confessed to killing her two children and then vanished before she could be sentenced. In the quiet suburb of Maplewood, life moved slowly and predictably. The streets were lined with identical houses' white fences, trimmed hedges, and neatly parked cars. Among these homes stood the Farrow residence, a two-story brick house with hanging flower baskets that swayed in the wind. It was the kind of place people imagined when they thought of a perfect family life. Neighbors often said Linda Farrow embodied the image of an ideal mother. She volunteered at the local elementary school, baked cookies for fundraisers, and never missed a parent-teacher conference. Her two children, Emily and Josh, were always dressed in clean, colorful clothes, their hair neatly brushed, their lunchboxes filled with home-cooked meals. Linda's husband, Daniel, worked long hours as a financial advisor, but he made time for weekend barbecues and the occasional family outing to the park. On Sundays, the Farrows attended church together. Smiling politely and chatting with other families in the pews, there was never any sign of tension. If anything, the Farrows seemed almost to perfect the type of family others compared themselves to when wondering if they were doing enough. Those who lived nearby saw Linda as endlessly patient. If the children misbehaved in public, she handled it with a gentle hand, never raising her voice. She seemed to have boundless energy, moving from one community activity to another, keeping her home spotless, and still finding time to tend to her garden. People often wondered how she managed it all without showing even a hint of stress. In a town where gossip was currency, there was simply nothing bad to say about her. Inside the Farrow home, the walls were decorated with family photographs, smiling faces on summer vacations, the children holding their first bicycles, birthday candles glowing in darkened rooms. The kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon, and the living room was always tidy, as if ready for unexpected guests. Emily and Josh's bedrooms were colorful and cheerful, filled with stuffed animals, books, and toys neatly stored away. To anyone visiting, it was a picture of love and stability. Yet there were moments, brief and easily dismissed, that hinted at something deeper. Sometimes Linda's gaze would linger to long out the window, her expression empty, as if she were listening to a sound no one else could hear. Other times she would disappear into her bedroom for hours, the door closed, her phone turned off. But whenever she emerged, she was smiling again, offering snacks to the kids or chatting about dinner plans. The small cracks in the image were too subtle for anyone to notice, and even if they had, no one would have suspected anything dark. In Maplewood, people prided themselves on knowing their neighbors, but the truth was, no one really knew Linda Farrow. They knew the version she showed them, the well-dressed, kind, dependable mother who seemed immune to the struggles other families faced. She fit so seamlessly into the town's vision of itself that questioning her would have seemed absurd. No one could have guessed that the woman who seemed to have it all would soon be at the center of a story so horrifying it would shatter the community's sense of safety forever. It was a Tuesday morning in late spring, the kind of day when the air felt heavy with rain that hadn't yet fallen. Most of Maplewood was just beginning to stir, school buses rumbling through the streets, coffee makers sputtering in kitchens, and children hurrying to finish their breakfasts. At exactly 7:40 a.m., a call came into the local police station. The voice on the other end was calm and steady, almost too steady. It was Linda Farrow. She told the dispatcher that her children were gone and that she was ready to confess. The words were delivered without panic or grief. As if she were reciting a grocery list, officers were dispatched immediately, sirens breaking the morning quiet as they raced toward the Farrow residence. The front door was unlocked, the welcome mat slightly crooked. Inside, the house looked untouched, no signs of chaos or struggle, no overturned chairs or broken glass. The air felt still, as if time had stopped. Upstairs, in a neatly arranged bedroom, Emily and Josh were found lying side by side in bed. Their blankets were pulled up to their chins, their faces peaceful, almost as if they were simply sleeping. but the unnatural stillness of their chests told the truth. The officers moved through the rest of the home, but nothing was out of place. Breakfast dishes sat clean in the drying rack. The television was off. A faint scent of lavender drifted from an air freshener in the hallway. In the kitchen, Linda sat at the table with her hands folded neatly in front of her. She looked directly at the officers as they entered, her eyes steady and unreadable. She didn't ask about her children. She didn't ask why they were there. She simply told them she had done it, offering no details, no explanations beyond saying it was for the best. The neighbors began to gather outside as word spread that something terrible had happened. Some whispered in disbelief, others stood silently, waiting for confirmation of what they feared. The sound of an ambulance arriving only deepened the sense of dread. Inside, paramedics confirmed what was already known: there was nothing more they could do. The children were pronounced dead at the scene. Linda was taken out of her house in handcuffs. She didn't fight. Her face was pale and she looked calm, almost like she wasn't part of what was happening. People stood outside, shocked. Just days before, they had smiled and waved at her. Now some called her name, while others looked away. When the police cars drove off, the Farrow home changed from a picture-perfect house to a crime scene. Yellow tape blew in the breeze, closing off the yard. Reporters arrived, their voices mixing with the whispers of neighbors. Maplewood was not used to something this dark. That morning, the idea of a perfect family was gone, replaced with a mystery no one understood. The trial began quickly. Everyone wanted answers. When Linda walked into court, all eyes were on her. She wore a beige sweater and dark pants, her hair neat, her back straight. She looked more like a teacher than someone accused of killing her children. Outside, reporters called out, but she never spoke. Every photo showed her calm, blank face. Inside the courtroom, tension filled the air. Daniel Farrow's family sat together, grief clear on their faces. Some sat stiffly, arms crossed. Others clutched tissues and avoided looking at Linda. On the other side, townspeople and reporters leaned forward, ready to hear every detail. This was the most shocking case Maplewood had ever seen. The prosecution told their story step by step. They showed crime scene photos, each one more upsetting. A detective described finding the children in bed, tucked in with their hands outside the covers. Experts explained the cause of death. The prosecutors said Linda planned the killings carefully. They said there was no hesitation and no struggle. The defense said Linda might have had mental health problems. A psychologist talked about possible depression, loneliness, and pressure to seem perfect. But her medical records showed no official illness, no treatment, nothing to support the claim. The defense had little to work with. Linda sat still. Sometimes she stared at the table, other times at the jury. She never cried or reacted. Then she did something that shocked everyone without warning her lawyers. She told the judge she wanted to change her plea from not guilty to guilty. People gasped. Her lawyers were stunned. The prosecutor froze. The judge asked if she understood what this meant. She nodded. The trial changed instantly. But the reason for her sudden confession remained a mystery. Why now? What did she want? The question stayed in everyone's minds as the judge ended the day. People thought her guilty plea meant the case was almost over. Sentencing was set for 3 weeks later. Everyone assumed she would stay in jail. But just days later, Linda asked to be released on bail until sentencing. She said she needed to take care of personal matters and arrange family affairs. The request angered many. News stations covered it constantly. Experts said it was very unlikely, but the county jail was overcrowded. Linda had no criminal record, no history of violence before this, and had cooperated since her arrest. At the bail hearing, the prosecution said she was a flight risk and her crime too serious for release. The defense said she was cooperative, had strong ties to the town, and had turned herself in. After hours of thinking, the judge shocked everyone. He gave her bail with strict rules. Linda was to be placed under house arrest at her Maplewood residence. She would wear a GPS ankle monitor, be barred from leaving the property except for court-approved appointments, and have no contact with minors. The moment the decision was announced, the gallery erupted in disbelief. Some gasped, others muttered under their breath. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, broadcasting the news live. When she returned home, her arrival was met with a wall of flashing cameras and microphones. Neighbors watched from their porches, their faces tight with unease. The once welcoming Farrow house now stood like a monument to fear, surrounded by a swirling storm of media and curiosity. Police cruisers patrolled the street in case tensions escalated. Inside, Linda settled into a quiet routine. The blinds stayed drawn, and the only visible movement came from shadowy figures passing by the windows at night. Delivery drivers reported leaving packages at the doorstep, only for them to vanish moments later. Her presence in the neighborhood cast a long shadow. Parents warned their children not to wander too close to the house, while others crossed the street entirely to avoid passing it. The decision to grant her temporary freedom became the subject of heated debates across town. For some, it was an unforgivable lapse in justice. For others, it was proof that the system could still uphold procedure, even in the face of outrage. But everyone agreed on one thing: whatever unfinished business Linda claimed to have, it would not end quietly. The countdown to her sentencing had begun, and the town waited, uneasy, for the day she would finally be locked away. At least, that's what they believed. The first week of Linda's release passed without incident. She stayed inside the house, avoiding the public eye, and the constant presence of patrol cars seemed to keep things calm. But on the 8th night, everything changed. At 11:17 p.m., the GPS signal from her ankle monitor went dead. Officers were dispatched immediately, assuming there had been a technical failure. When they arrived, they found the device lying on the back porch, its strap sliced clean through. The porch light was off, the back gate slightly ajar. Inside, the home looked untouched. A half-empty cup of tea sat on the kitchen counter. A book was left open on the couch as if she had simply stepped away for a moment. There were no signs of forced entry, no overturned furniture, and no notes explaining her disappearance. The silence was suffocating. Within hours, a statewide alert was issued. Investigators combed through security footage from the neighborhood. At 10:48 p.m., a grainy image captured a figure resembling Linda walking down the sidewalk, wearing a dark coat and carrying a small duffel bag. Just minutes later, another camera showed her boarding a bus at the edge of town. The driver later confirmed a quiet woman matching her description had paid in cash, keeping her head down the entire ride. The bus was headed toward a city 3 hours away. After that, the trail went cold. Speculation spread quickly. Some believed she had planned the escape from the moment she was granted bail, taking advantage of the court's decision. Others suspected she had helped someone who provided transportation, money, and a place to hide. Theories multiplied online. Perhaps she was trying to reach family members in another state, or maybe she intended to flee the country entirely. A few residents even claimed to have spotted her in neighboring towns, though none of the sightings were confirmed. The shock of her disappearance was felt most sharply in Maplewood. Many residents were furious, feeling betrayed not just by Linda, but by the legal system that had allowed her to walk free before sentencing. Parents kept their children closer, and some households installed new locks and security cameras. The once quiet streets now buzzed with whispered conversations about where she might be and what she might do next. Law enforcement launched a nationwide manhunt, distributing her photo to airports, bus stations, and border checkpoints. Still, weeks passed without progress. The longer she remained missing, the more likely it seemed that she had slipped into a life under a new name, blending into a different community just as seamlessly as she once had in Maplewood. Her story became a fixture in true crime podcasts and late-night news segments, often accompanied by the same haunting question: if she could live for years hiding her darkest secret in plain sight, what else was she capable of? The case, which had begun as a tragedy inside a suburban home, now hung like an open wound, unresolved and unsettling. And somewhere, far from the place where it all began, Linda Farrow was free.